Are you serious right now, bro?
God have mercy upon us.
Hi everyone, it's the 8-Bit Academic here, ready to trick you into being educated against your will by dressing up the lesson with a bit of retro gaming goodness.
Wait a minute, this game is educational. That'll teach you to teach me.
In today's episode, I'm going to attempt to sell you all on one of the worst fighting games ever made, which was also a very early attempt at character creation all the way back in the late 90s. And the only reason I'm doing this is because I kinda have fond memories of playing this on my PS1 console as a kid. But looking back now, I was probably mentally challenged or something because this game is horrible. But here we are, so we may as well continue. Fighter Maker is the first in a series of video games which attempted to allow players the opportunity to live out their fantasies of being game developers by featuring a distinct game mode wherein one could fully customize a character's moveset by picking one of the many generic fighters featured in the roster and creating whichever moves you wish to for them. Though the characters are all unnamed and each have their own distinct fighting styles based on actual real-life martial arts systems, except for maybe the guest character Skullomania, since I've yet to come across a fighting style called Superhero. Each and every one of them seem to be blatant rip-offs of characters from other popular fighting games at the time. Okay, so not all the characters are rip-offs, but you can definitely see some similarities between the characters here and characters from other fighting games. So this to me looks like Hokuto from Street Fighter EX plus Alpha and Street Fighter EX2, as well as the Fighting Layer games. I mean, this might as well just be Heihachi from Tekken, just with like a different hairstyle. And there's our licensed character, the one licensed character, Skullomania, also from Street Fighter EX plus Alpha, EX2 plus, EX3, and the Fighting Layer games. This is basically just Benimaru from King of Fighters. That looks a little bit like Anna Williams from Tekken 3, or at least the Anna Williams we all fantasize about. This kind of looks like Nina Williams from the Tekken games. I'm not so sure about him. And that, come on, that's just Sonya Blade from Mortal Kombat. Especially Mortal Kombat 4, if you've played Mortal Kombat 4, or any of the later Mortal Kombat games. This just looks like a combination of Ryu from the very first Street Fighter game and Akira from Virtua Fighter. And that's just Tiger Jackson from Tekken 3. And this looks like a cross between Guile from Street Fighter and Duke Nukem. And for anyone who's like really into like Street Fighter history and who has, played or at least seen the very first Street Fighter game, this guy looks kind of like the very first boss character you fight named Retsu. And this is just Ling Xiaoyu or Pai Mei. Not Pai Mei. Ling Xiaoyu or Pai. So Ling Xiaoyu from Tekken 3 or Pai from Virtua Fighter, or Lei Fang from Dead or Alive. I think her name's Lei Fang. That's just Adon from Street Fighter. And this guy looks like a cross between Albert Wesker from Resident Evil and D-Doc from Street Fighter EX plus Alpha, well, the Street Fighter EX games and the Fighting Layer games. But then it turns out he's actually based on the lead singer from the UK techno band Intelligentsia, I think it's called. And the reason he's here is because they supposedly made the soundtrack for this game. And that's it. So in a nutshell, Fighter Maker is what happens when you order a fighting game from Wish or Temu. These are just the few that I could recognize offhand. If any of you spot any more from other games, please let me know in the comments. To be fair though, playing as one of these bootleg characters in the base game can be entertaining, when it decides to work properly. The movesets, character animations and combos aren't all that bad, just that sometimes the hitboxes feel like they're all over the place. There's no real story or goal to the actual arcade mode, but as bland as it may seem, the main feature of it all is the edit mode, which as I mentioned earlier allows you to pick one of the bootleg characters and create your own series of moves and combos for them. Fighter Maker was developed by ASCII Entertainment and published by AgeTech Inc. and was released for the Sony PlayStation 1 back in 1998 and 1999, depending on global region. It ended up spawning a bit of a franchise, with a sequel for the PlayStation 2 and a series of 2D versions as well, like 2D Fighter Maker 95 and 2D Fighter Maker 2nd. So I probably have mentioned this before on one of my previous videos that I am a huge fan of kung fu and martial arts movies, especially from the 1970s and 80s, and in my 30 plus years on this earth I have seen a fair number of them and have even gathered quite the vast amounts of knowledge on them as well as the industry they spawned from, namely the Hong Kong film industry, which had its golden age in the late 1960s to the early 2000s, thanks to production companies like Shaw Brothers and Golden Harvest. I'm sure most of us are familiar with the works of Bruce Lee, Donnie Yen, Jackie Chan, Michelle Yeoh, Jet Li and Sammo Hung, who are arguably some of the more famous faces of the martial arts action genre, but who, like many others, all had their start in Hong Kong. Sadly today, however, Hong Kong film is not as popular as it used to be, being overshadowed these days by mainland China and other countries like South Korea, Japan, India and even Indonesia and Thailand when it comes to Eastern entertainment. And this is due in part to the handover of the famous port city back to China in the year 1997, after having been a British colony for well over 150 years. With the handover came censorship and crackdowns on creative freedom, as well as a loss of talent, with many Hong Kong actors, directors and producers trying their luck in the West. This however doesn't mean that they didn't still produce some great films over the last 28 years, one of them being the highly entertaining and hilariously funny Kung Fu Hustle, starring Chinese comedian Stephen Chow. I'm sure most of us who are familiar with Kung Fu films have at least once seen Kung Fu Hustle, with its extremely over-the-top fight scenes and its hilarious slapstick and exaggerated humor, which utilized early CGI to get the job done and deliver both the action and the punchlines. Admittedly, the first time I watched it back in high school, I wasn't a fan, since I went into it expecting a more serious story in the vein of the Once Upon a Time in China films or Fist of Legend, which are both Jet Li classics by the way. If you haven't watched them, I highly recommend that you do. But after re-watching it a couple more times over the years, I came to really appreciate it, and like most nowadays, I consider it as one of the best action comedies of all time. One of the characters that stood out the most for many fans and is regarded as the epitome of a strong female lead, which far outshines all of Disney's recent attempts and is far from being objectified or sexualized, is the landlady of Pigsty Alley, whose no-nonsense attitude and the lion's raw kung fu ability made her an instant favorite. But how many of you knew that the actress playing her named Yuen Qiu actually had a fairly decent career that dates back all the way to the early 1970s, and that she actually was formally trained in the martial arts? The story of the lion's roar starts in the year 1950 in Shandong province in mainland China, before her family moved to Hong Kong, which back then was still a British colony. The woman who would later become the famous landlady of Pigsty Alley would end up learning both Peking opera and martial arts at the China Drama Academy's Peking Opera School under the harsh bootcamp style tutelage of Shifu Yu Jim Yun, the same master who taught Jackie Chan, Sammo Hung and Yuen Biao. Even though she shared the same opera stage as they did around the same time, it would take her almost 40 years to actually reap the rewards of her hard labor, only receiving international fame and stardom after her role in Kung Fu Hustle, which was released in 2004. She did, however, star in a number of smaller roles in other films in the 1970s and 80s, and these are the ones that I would like to focus on in today's video to somewhat bring to light her actual skills as both a stunt woman, an actress, and a martial artist. She started off with minor roles in films like Rumble in Hong Kong, and Not Scared to Die, both released in 1973, and would follow this up with another one of her earliest roles in a James Bond film titled The Man with the Golden Gun in 1974, alongside lead actor Roger Moore, where she is seen as a schoolgirl that rescues James Bond himself from a band of thugs with her highly formidable kung fu skills. She would also star in Black Dragon Revenges The Death of Bruce Lee, or simply The Black Dragon's Revenge, starring martial arts expert Ron Van Cleef, and which was a mix of blaxploitation and bruceploitation. Blaxploitation being a low-budget American exploitation and action genre that catered to an exclusively black audience and featured a fully black cast that was popular in grindhouse movie theaters or cinemas in the 1970s, and bruceploitation being the greedy attempt by Hong Kong filmmakers to cash in on Bruce Lee's popularity and fame after his death by getting Chinese stuntmen who somewhat resembled the late Dragon to act as him in films and pass them off as authentic Bruce Lee movies. After this, she would land a role in yet another bruceploitation film called Dragon Lee vs. the Five Brothers in 1978. And another called The Dragon, the Young Master, or Deadly Silver Ninja in that same year. In 1979, she would appear in a movie called The Fearless Duo.
Sister, your kung fu is really excellent and it's improving every day.
Sister, we must keep on practicing hard and try to develop some new styles from our kung fu. What we've learned is really nothing much at all. They're only the few basic steps. So now we must try to develop some new moves. That way we can outwit our enemies.
All right, come on, let's try. Where do we start?
Okay, you attack me. This style is a very good one. Attack, sister. Hit out and surprise them when they least expect it. Try again.
And follow that up in the same year by landing a gig in the film Dragon's Claws, where she would fulfill the role of a mother to the main protagonist of the movie.
Be quick now. Wait! Come back here. Don't have a fight if you cannot win.
I remember first watching this film when I was in the 6th grade, as part of a Friday night double feature together with Jet Li's Shaolin Temple on ETV, a South African local TV channel, which was most likely the reason I got so into martial arts action films in the first place, since they would always play these old school kung fu movies back when I was a kid. In my humble opinion, Dragon's Claws is probably the purest display of Yuen Qiu's skill as a martial artist and stuntwoman, as it shows in the fight choreography.
Ma,
What's wrong?
nothing. Ma,
Hey, you fool! Watch out! Hey, left leg, right leg, jump up, jump up, jump up! Dragon's fist. It's hopeless. Hey. Breathe deeply.
Ma.
All right, keep practicing.
Another film she did in 1979 called The Dragon Snake Fist, starring the same Bruce Lee clone Dragon Lee, whose real name is Yuen Qiu, from the two previously mentioned Bruceploitation movies from 1978. In the 80s, her screen time would sadly begin to diminish a lot more due to possibly not being seen as attractive as the other kung fu starlets of the time, or just plain down to industry sexism and misogyny, which is a tad bit ironic because the 80s was definitely the time for female action stars in Hong Kong, with even non-Chinese actresses like Cynthia Rothrock making quite the name for themselves in the so-called girls with guns subgenre of Hong Kong action movies. The same genre that saw the start of Michelle Yeoh's career, as well as other actresses like Moon Lee, Kara Wai, and Japanese-born Yukari Oshima. Her only roles would be in the Golden Harvest production starring Yuen Biao called Dreadnought in 1981, and a few small roles in a handful of Shaw Brothers movies like The Bastard Swordsman, New Tales of the Flying Fox, Long Road to Gallantry, and Crazy Shaolin Disciples between 1983 and 1985. Her last movie of that decade, when the Soviet Union collapsed and the CIA was funneling cocaine into black neighborhoods via a civil war in Nicaragua, was in 1986's Disciples of the 36th Chamber, which was another Shaw Brothers classic starring Gordon Liu and is a follow-up to the 36th Chamber of Shaolin and Return to the 36th Chamber from the late 1970s.
的连环鸳鸯腿。
She ended up deciding to leave the industry for good after this last movie, feeling dissatisfied with her lack of stability and dwindling film roles, as well as a lack of opportunities despite being quite skilled at her craft, and instead turning her attention to marriage and raising her 2 children. Sadly, after this, Yuen Qiu would not star in another movie for the next 18 years, until she was rediscovered on accident by famous Hong Kong comedian and actor Stephen Chow while he was scouting for Kung Fu Hustle, who recognized her while she was on a smoke break as the Kung Fu starlet from the golden age that never was. Her role as the landlady with the extremely loud voice, aka the Lion's Roar, would go on to push her to international stardom at the age of 54, and she would enjoy great success right up until the present day, starring in Chinese films like Kung Fu Mahjong, The Lady Iron Chef, Desires of the Heart, My Beloved Bodyguard, My Alien Girlfriend, Europe Raiders, and Second Life between 2005 and 2024, as well as landing roles in a handful of Chinese TV shows like Longman Express and A Fist Within 4 Walls, just to mention a few. While her road to success started off quite late in life, it cannot be disputed that Yuen Qiu is definitely a legend in her own right. Aside from playing one of the most empowering and recognizable female characters on screen, she is also a highly skilled martial artist, stunt woman and actress who has left her mark in Asian cinema in her own special way, and will always be remembered as the mean old landlady from Kung Fu Hustle with the Lion's Roar. At the age of 74, I'd say that she has definitely deserved all the success she has gained in her twilight years, especially considering her struggle in her early years as a stunt woman and kung fu actress that was overshadowed by bigger names in the industry like Michelle Yeoh, Moon Lee, Kara Wai, Angela Mao, and Chia Ling. Anyway, once again we have come to the end of another video. I hope you have all enjoyed this one, and perhaps I have helped to turn some of you into even bigger fans of the landlady from Kung Fu Hustle. Do go check out some of her other films. I highly recommend them, especially if you're fans of old school chop socky kung fu movies with bad English dubs. Then I'd say to definitely watch Dragon's Claws and Disciples of the 36th Chamber to see her in action. Thank you to those who have subscribed, liked, and commented on this video. You're really helping me out in the algorithm, and I'll see you all in the next one. Sayonara.
Hey!